Am I the a-hole for cutting off my parents because they plan on leaving almost everything to my disabled brother? My 24F brother, 32M, is a failure to launch. He's never been very smart. He did badly in school and never went to college. He tried 2 different trade schools, welding and mechanic, but he basically flunked out of both. He works at a gas station now. My brother and I are our parents' only children. They always treated us relatively equal until adulthood. They always insisted we earn our own way. They refused to pay for college or anything. I joined the military at 17, got an associate's degree while I was in, and my GI Bill went toward my bachelor's. I'm working towards my master's now. My husband and I have bought a house and have done well for ourselves. My parents, however, fully paid for my brother to try trade school twice. They've given him cash when he was behind on rent and countless loans. They support him cosplaying as an adult. Meanwhile, they never paid for my wedding, education, nothing. I don't really care so much that they didn't give me money, but the disparity in how they've treated me versus my brother. Our parents are in their 60s now, and while they aren't that old, they're both in bad health and probably won't live another 10 years. They just recently started working on their will and notified us that they were leaving almost everything to my brother. But they want me to be their medical power of attorney, manage their estate, etc. I told my parents to give my brother everything, and that I'm completely done with them. They told me to have some grace and understand the fact that he isn't very capable and needs their support, even after they're gone. My mother had a doctor's appointment this morning and asked me for a ride since she medically can't work. I told her to ask her favorite child or pay for an Uber. Things have been tense and hostile. My brother called me to apologize and asked me to not be mad at him, but I told him that I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at our parents for not treating us equally, and he didn't do anything wrong. Am I the a-hole? Note, I meant to put disabled in quotation marks. My mother refers to my brother as disabled even though he isn't. She's had him tested for every kind of learning disability there is. He just has a below average IQ. She thinks that counts as a disability when it isn't. Ada has no consensus bot. OP received mixed reactions. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. He does not sound disabled to me if he went to 2 different trade schools, welding and mechanic, just lazy. Odds are if he gets the money, it'll not last him long, then he'll be looking to you to pay his bills. OP. He's not disabled, but he's very unintelligent and has poor critical thinking skills. He doesn't really understand how to manage money at all, despite having been taught how. How is OP's brother disabled? Medical issues, etc. OP. He's not. He's just unintelligent. I meant to put disabled in quotation marks. My mother refers to him as disabled, but he's been tested and has no actual disabilities. My mother thinks being dumb is a disability. Commenter 2. If his IQ is that low, he is intellectually disabled. An IQ below 75 is considered intellectually impaired. It doesn't excuse the implied favoritism. OP. When they had us tested, mine was 131, I believe, and his was around 80. It's been so many years, I'm having a hard time remembering. It definitely was above the cutoff for being considered intellectually disabled, because I remember them being surprised that he scored above it. Did OP plan to take care of her parents when they get old? OP. I originally was going to take care of them in their old age, but I now have decided they're going to a nursing home if it's up to me. I'm done. Commenter 3. But they want me to be their medical power of attorney, manage their estate, etc. This is a huge ask even if you stood to inherit. That you're expected to do all the heavy lifting and then be your brother's keeper after they pass is that it's a hell of a lot. Why can't OP's brother live with their parents to take care of them? OP. They don't want to ask him. He's forgetful, and they probably wouldn't be able to rely on him anyways. Update 1. 2 days later. Hey. So the consensus on my post was a bit of a mixed bag. I sat down with my parents and I wanted to give an update and answer some stuff. My brother is not actually disabled. He just has a low IQ, just over 80. You need an IQ under 70 where I live to be considered disabled and to qualify for any sort of benefits. My parents have babied him because from a young age he wasn't as smart as other kids and had a low self-esteem because of that and was quick to give up on things when they seemed too hard. He does okay on his own now. He works and pays his bills most of the time. He drives and lives with a roommate. On to the update. I sat down with my parents and explained that I've always felt like they treated me worse than my brother. They always emphasized to me that as an adult you need to support yourself and figure things out on your own. I had to join the military at 17 because I knew they'd kick me out when I was 18. My parents never offered me any support outside of raising me as a child. They didn't buy my husband and I a wedding gift. They didn't offer much of anything. Meanwhile, they brag about having over $1 million in the bank and having succeeded from nothing. Meanwhile, they paid to put my brother through 2 trade schools that he failed out of, offer him money to start his own business. They've always bailed him out when he was short on rent. For me, it's not so much about the money, but about the disparity in how we've been treated. It's obvious that they loved and cared him more because they were willing to do these things for him and not me. But despite them not being there for me, I've still done really well in life. I told my parents about all of this, and they were interrupting me and talking over me the whole time. They told me I'm not entitled a dime when they die, and that I'm an adult and I can handle myself. They just weren't understanding or even caring about my point. They told me I need to step up and treat them better, and that it's wrong of me to not take my sick mother to the doctor or take care of her because of money. Eventually, I just gave up on trying to talk about my feelings. They just don't care. I told them that they're adults, and they're not entitled to anything from me. Just like how they were never required to help me, I'm not required to help me. I told them to complete remove me from their will. I'm not willing to be their estate executor, medical power of attorney, nothing. I don't want a dime from them at this point, and I suggested they spend all the money they've saved over the years to pay for really good nursing homes and an estate executor, because I'm no longer willing to do anything for them. My mother was floored and asked if I'd really put my own parents in a nursing home. I asked if they'd really let their 17-year-old daughter join the army to get sexually harassed by older men in order to go to school without taking on a huge debt. My parents cried and yelled at me, and I left. And that's that, I guess. I kind of feel relieved, like a massive weight is off my shoulders. I have a wonderful husband. We own a nice home. I'm getting ready to start working on my master's degree, and we're thinking about maybe having a baby soon. I no longer have to worry about dealing with my parents. They're adults, and they can deal with their own problems, just like I've done with mine. And yeah, that's it. Not sure if it's the update we wanted, but it is what it is. TDLR. My parents wanted to leave almost everything to my older brother because he's not as successful in life. I feel like my parents have always favored him over me. My parents don't care about my feelings and won't listen to them, so I told them our relationship is over. I don't want anything from them at this point, and I'm moving on. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Honestly, I would have cut them off at the wedding if they had $1 million and didn't even give me a $20 vase or something. Who shows up to a wedding empty-handed? OP. I've been to a lot of weddings and I would never show up without a wedding gift. It's rude. Not to mention my in-laws actually paid for the entire wedding, and my cheap parents became a major talking point. It was very embarrassing. Commenter 2. NTA. Your parents are TAs. I know this might be a sucky suggestion, but you may need to go NC with your brother as well. He'll be stuck with their care, and there's going to be a high likelihood they'll tell him to reach out to you for help. Or your brother may take the easy way out and stick them in a nursing home, which they totally deserve. OP. My brother's not a terrible guy. He makes bad choices sometimes, but at the end of the day, he's still my older brother, and he tries to be good to me. I wouldn't cut him off without a good reason. Commenter 3. NTA, I like how they told you that you're an adult and not entitled to their help, and you threw those words right back in their faces. Commenter 4. They tell you they're not leaving you a dime, yet expect you to care for them in their old age, drive them places, and handle the estate when they die. Do they not see how ludicrous they are? Commenter 5. They've spent so long using you as their personal doormat, they're not even able to break from their delusion that you'll keep presenting your face for them to step on. Congrats on your newfound freedom. Update 2. A week later. Hey, everyone. I wasn't planning on another update, but let's just say things escalated in ways I didn't expect. Strap in. After the last conversation with my parents, I thought it was done. I genuinely thought we'd all just go our separate ways, and that would be the end of it. But my parents apparently don't know how to take a hint. Yesterday, I came home from work to find my mother sitting on my front porch. She looked pale and frail, but don't let that fool you. This woman can summon drama out of thin air. My husband and I both work full-time, and the last thing I needed was this unannounced ambush. When I opened the door, she launched into a tearful monologue about how I'm abandoning my family and spitting in the face of everything they've done for me. Mind you, everything they've done for me includes checks notes housing me until I turn 18 and then booting me out with no safety net. I told her flatly that we'd already talked about this, and there was nothing left to say. That's when she hit me with the real kicker. They want me to reconsider being their medical power of attorney. Y'all, I laughed. Like, full-on couldn't breathe for a second. I asked her why on earth I'd agree to that, given everything. She got all indignant and said, "Because you're the only one who can handle it. You're responsible, and your brother. Well, he can't handle those kinds of decisions." Shocker. I told her, "You've made it clear I'm not entitled to anything, so why should I be entitled to that responsibility? Call an attorney, hire a professional. There's no shortage of people who'll take your money to do this." And then, in true narcissist fashion, she flipped the script. She started sobbing, badly, might I add. She's not even a convincing crier, and saying that they just want me to love them again. Again, I reiterated that my issue isn't love or hate, it's respect, or rather, their complete lack of it for me. I told her I wasn't her emotional punching bag or free eldercare plan, and that she could leave, or I'd call the cops. She left after hurling a few choice insults about how I'd regret this when they're gone. But wait, there's more. Not even an hour later, my brother called. He'd apparently been looped into the drama and wanted to mediate. I love my brother, but the man couldn't mediate his way out of a paper bag. He started with the usual, "Mom's really upset, and I think you should talk to her," which I shut down immediately. Then he said something that stopped me cold. "They're thinking of changing the will to make me the executor and power of attorney, but I don't know if I can handle it." This might have been the most honesty I've ever heard from him. He sounded overwhelmed, and I felt a twinge of guilt, not for my parents, but for him. I asked him why he thought he couldn't handle it, and he said, "I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. I don't even understand what all those documents mean." I realized for the first time that my brother's fear wasn't just about failing. He knows he's in over his head, but doesn't know what to do about it. It's like my parents raised him to depend on them so much that now, as adults, they're leaving him stranded too. I told him, as gently as I could, that it's okay to feel overwhelmed, but that this is not my responsibility. "You're going to have to learn how to handle these things or they'll eat you alive," I said. I offered to help him find a financial planner or a lawyer to guide him when the time comes, but I refused to take on the role myself. He sounded disappointed, but thanked me for being honest. Here's where things get even messier. This morning, I woke up to a Facebook post from my mother because, of course, she had to make it public. It was one of those cringe posts where she didn't name names, but said things like, "It's so painful when your own child turns their back on you after all you've sacrificed for them. I hope, one day, they realize the pain they've caused." Cue the world's smallest violin. And wouldn't you know it, half the family dogpiled in the comments, calling me ungrateful and selfish. But to my absolute shock, a few relatives, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, came to my defense. My cousin straight up commented, "Maybe if you didn't play favorites, this wouldn't have happened." I had to resist the urge to grab popcorn. It's wild watching family drama play out like a bad soap opera, especially when you're the unwilling star. So, here we are. My parents are stewing in their bitterness. My brother is panicking about the future, and I'm sitting here wondering if this is really how my family fell apart. Part of me feels bad, but mostly, I feel relieved. I didn't ask for any of this, but I'm finally setting boundaries, and damn, it feels good. Update 3. 2 weeks later. So, remember how I said I didn't know what was coming next? My parents have taken their campaign of chaos to a level I didn't think possible. I genuinely didn't think it could surprise me anymore. But here we are. Last week, I got a certified letter in the mail. For a hot second, I thought maybe it was something related to my parents' will or some formal document about disinheriting me. Fine by me, honestly. Nope. It was a demand letter, yes, an actual, typed-out demand letter from my parents' lawyer. Apparently, my mother decided that if I won't help out of the goodness of my heart, they'll legally force me to do it. The letter basically said that as their only competent child, I was morally obligated to assist them in their old age, and that if I refused, they'd pursue legal action to force me to care for them. Yes, legal action. I almost choked laughing. Not because I don't take legal threats seriously, but because the sheer audacity of it was too much. This is the same woman who cried on my porch 2 weeks ago, and now she's trying to weaponize the legal system against me? I didn't even know where to start. Naturally, I sent the letter straight to my lawyer. Pro tip: always have a lawyer when you're dealing with family drama this messy. She was just as baffled as I was, and told me that while it's technically possible in some states to pursue legal action for filial responsibility, the chances of this holding up in court are slim to none. Not to mention the fact that my parents have $1 million savings account and clearly aren't destitute. It's not like they're on the verge of eviction or starving. I texted my brother to see if he knew anything about this, and surprise, he didn't. He sounded horrified and swore up and down that he had no part in it. He even offered to talk to my parents and try to reason with them. I told him not to bother. Reasoning with my parents is like trying to teach calculus to a squirrel. It's just not happening. The cherry on top, that same day, I got a notification from my bank about an attempted login to my account. I don't know for sure that it was my parents, but the timing was suspicious. I immediately changed all my passwords, locked down my credit, and set up fraud alerts. Paranoia? Maybe. But with my parents spiraling like this, I wouldn't put anything past them. Meanwhile, the family drama on Facebook has reached new heights. My mother's latest post accused me of being brainwashed by my husband, who she implied is some kind of evil puppet master. For the record, my husband has stayed completely out of this. He's been nothing but supportive and has let me handle things my way. My aunt, bless her soul, commented, "If anyone's been brainwashed, it's the person who thinks throwing money at one child and ignoring the other is good parenting." I owe that woman a drink. As for my brother, he's still stuck in the middle. He called me yesterday to apologize again, and I could tell he's feeling the heat from my parents. They've started hinting that if I won't step up, he'll have to take on more responsibilities, which is clearly making him panic. He even asked if I could just do it for a little while to keep the peace. I told him, lovingly but firmly, that this isn't my fight anymore. I said, you need to set boundaries with them too. If you don't, they'll drag you down with them. He sounded defeated, but said he'd think about it. Here's the kicker, though. I've started hearing rumors from extended family that my parents are considering selling their house and moving closer to me. Let me repeat, that closer to me. Like they're trying to physically corner me into taking care of them. I have no confirmation yet, but if this turns out to be true, I might need to invest in a moat and a drawbridge. At this point, I'm honestly just tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the manipulation, and tired of my parents' refusal to take accountability for their actions. I've worked so hard to build a life I'm proud of, and I'm not going to let them drag me back into their chaos. If they want to spend their golden years in a cycle of pettiness and entitlement, that's their choice. But I'm out. The next step. I'm considering going no contact entirely. I haven't made the final decision yet, but every day, it feels more and more like the only way to protect my peace. My parents seem determined to burn every bridge between us, and honestly, I'm just going to let them. Final update. After my last update, I decided to take the nuclear option. I went completely no contact with my parents. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on every social media platform, and told my brother I needed some space to sort my feelings. He was surprisingly understanding, though I could tell he was uneasy about being left alone with the full brunt of our parents' antics. I told him I'd always be there for him, but I couldn't keep being the buffer between him and them. The fallout was swift. My parents tried calling my husband's phone, messaging mutual friends, and even emailing me from multiple burner accounts with subject lines like, "You're making a mistake," and "Family is forever." I didn't respond to a single one. Every time they tried to pull me back into their vortex, I reminded myself, this isn't my responsibility. Let them spin their wheels. Then, the final act began. About a week after I went no contact, my brother called me in a full-blown panic. Apparently, my parents had decided to sell their house and move into a luxury retirement community nearby. Not to be closer to me, as I had feared, but because they decided they deserved to live in style. The kicker. They planned to drain almost half of their savings to afford the upfront cost of this place. That million-dollar nest egg they were always bragging about, they were ready to blow it on fancy condos, personal chefs, and on-site spa treatments. At first, I thought, good, let them live it up. Spend every last penny so there's no estate left to fight over. But then my brother dropped the bombshell. They expect me to help pay for it. I nearly spit out my coffee. What do you mean they expect you to help pay for it? I asked. My brother explained that while the upfront cost would wipe out a big chunk of their savings, the monthly fees were astronomical, and they'd eventually run out of money. We asked them what they planned to do when that happened. They casually replied, "Oh, you'll help. That's what family does." Let me be clear. My brother makes minimum wage at a gas station. He barely makes enough to cover his own rent and groceries, let alone subsidize a couple of retirees living like Kardashians. I could feel his anxiety through the phone, and for the first time, I realized just how much of their mess was about to fall squarely on his shoulders. "You need to tell them no," I said. "You have to set boundaries now, or they'll bleed you dry." "But what if they end up homeless?" he asked, sounding genuinely torn. I sighed. "They won't. They're just trying to manipulate you. Worst case, they sell the condo and downsize. They're adults. They'll figure it out. But you're not their safety net, and neither am I. I don't know if my words got through to him, but he said he'd think about it. That was the last time I spoke to him for a while. Then came the silence. For weeks, I heard nothing from my parents. No emails, no texts, no secondhand guilt trips from extended family. It was eerie. I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd finally gotten the message. Then out of nowhere I got a text from my brother. They moved. It's done. They didn't even tell me until it was over. Apparently, they sold their house, cashed in a bunch of their investments, and moved into the retirement community without so much as a goodbye. My brother sounded hurt, but I could tell there was a flicker of relief in his voice too. For the first time in years, he wasn't the fallback plan. He wasn't their fixer. He wasn't their backup wallet. And you know what? Neither was I. The final twist. A month after their move, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Just 3 lines. We hope you're happy with your choices. You'll regret abandoning us one day. But don't worry, you're out of the will, just like you wanted. I laughed out loud when I read it. Not because it wasn't petty, it absolutely was, but because it was so them. Even in their final attempt to guilt me, they completely missed the point. It was never about the money. It was about the respect they refused to give me, no matter how hard I tried to earn it. And honestly, that letter felt like freedom. So, where does that leave us now? My parents are off living their champagne dreams, probably complaining to their new neighbors about their ungrateful children. My brother has started seeing a therapist and is finally learning how to set boundaries of his own. And me, I'm thriving. My husband and I are expecting our first child, and I'm halfway through my master's program. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living for me, not for the approval of people who never saw my worth. Do I regret cutting them off? Not for a second. Some bridges need to be burned so you can light the way forward.